So, Zaalah,
Yeah.
Caleb, what should I call you?
I'm good with either. I think when we were doing the PBBG podcast, it was Caleb and then I had Zala like in parentheses so people would know who I am. But
Yep,
yeah, I'm good with either.
cool. Yeah, that was my first introduction to PVGs. I watched
Nice.
all 6 episodes of the PVG podcast, and
Yeah.
yours was the fifth, and that was my first glimpse into someone who's living the life. So that
Yeah.
was really cool.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love doing those. Those were so much fun. I think there's like a,
Yeah,
a sweet spot in time where like we all had capacity and ability to do it. And then yeah, real life got in the way. I had a kid. Fu had some real life responsibilities. So yeah, we have talked a couple times about bringing it back, but it always tends to fizzle a little bit. It's hard to carve the time out.
yeah. Well, I hope you do. They're definitely
Yeah.
awesome. You guys had great game design topics, and like,
Thank you. Yeah. Reading back on them, like watching them is like kind of weird. Like there's some things where I'm like, yeah, that still holds true. Or like, that's a great point. And then there's some stuff that I'm like, what was I thinking? That's totally wrong. So I think it'd be
oh,
cool to
really?
like revisit some topics. Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had something more specific in mind that I could like give you an example. But for most part, just inexperience, just thinking this is one way to do things the best and then realizing no, there's tons of ways you can do things. So,
Does the quadrant still hold up with the players, the different types of players?
oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was really
Some things will
helpful.
never change, right?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, how did you get into PUBGs, or I guess how did you get into dev originally, and then how did that
Yeah.
lead you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, development originally, I started making websites when I was like 13. So, we had dial up internet at the time. I remember the upgrade from dial up to DSL. It was like blazing fast. But I
Yeah,
made just basic websites with HTML and CSS, like everything in line, and starting like just making choose your own adventure type stories. And so, finding the branching storylines, and every single option was a whole new web page. So, like, you literally could go in, and every single one was like, made individually, copy paste, copy paste. But I loved it, being able to design things, choose the colors, like see, I'd make a change in Notepad and then save, and it would refresh on the browser or something different. So yeah, I kind of got started there, and then just let
awesome.
it be sort of a hobby for a long time. And then in college, it kind of reignited my love for it. I got my degree in marketing, and then my last semester, I took a programming class, just thinking this will be an easy blow off class, and it went into some more intermediate topics that I was like, oh wow, like there's actually a lot under the hood here that's pretty exciting. And so started to like get a little bit more into it as far as hobby stuff. That's when I started kind of bringing up the idea of getting into PBBGs, making games. And then about 7 years ago, started doing it professionally and grew a ton. And that's when I made Elethor and felt like, okay, I can actually do this. Like I'm building something end to end from scratch. But as far as like PBBGs themselves, I feel like I've always been involved. Like I remember old like tribal wars days, like setting alarms at 1 a.m. to make sure that I could have my troops go and attack certain people at a certain time, and timing noble trains and building like scripts in order to like open different tabs to farm different cities, and like yeah, really getting into it and like just loving that. And the community around it, I think that's kind of still what I love about the community, just the people who are kind of around it. We're all a little bit like of older souls now. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, just the same like passion for community, for interaction, for the way that these games kind of like draw us together.
yeah. The community is so high quality, and you
Yes.
and the crew are such a big part of that. I think that podcast is a great introduction to the
Yeah.
community and just how they treat each other. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've absolutely fell in love with the community, and that's why I'm doing these. Is just because I want to share that with a lot of people and learn more
Yeah.
about the people I'm talking
I know.
to.
I love that. Yeah. I was telling my wife that I was doing this, and she was like, well, like, why is he doing it? I'm like, I'm pretty sure he just loves the community and wants to like interview developers and get to know people a little better. She was like, that's so cool. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I definitely want to spread the word about
Yeah.
PVGs and spread the knowledge of how easy it is,
Yes.
and because it's kind of crazy there aren't more PVGs, PVBGs
Honestly.
really.
Yeah.
Like, there's still people coming in pretty often saying like, "Hey, know any good PVGs? I'm playing this idol and I want to like play another idol at the same
Yeah.
time," you know? So there's
Yeah.
still desire and still a big market, I feel like. So
Yeah, and I think for developers too, there's like it's a really good like gateway drug to game development where you can do something solo. I think there's like the incremental game subreddit, which is great for like, okay, I can hack together something. I say hack in a loving term, right? Like you can put something together pretty easily that runs in the browser and is idle incremental. And I feel like in some ways going to PBBG is a little bit of a step up because you're doing multiplayer, handling server side state, things like that. But it's not even close to like learning Unreal or Unity or trying to develop like in a game studio type thing. So it kind of scratches that itch without being like, okay, I have to do this as a full time job now. So I resent
Yeah.
just a little bit in your interview with Randy. You were talking about us devs being lazy because we didn't know how to like ship to actual Steam. And I think I messaged in the thread. I was like, I feel called out because I don't know
Yeah.
how to do that.
I mean,
Yeah, but I
that's,
love it. No, it's like it's easy just to deploy to get something out there, and people will test it and play with it, and yeah, it's great.
yeah, I mean, it's 100% the reason I'm not making a Steam
Yes,
game
yeah,
because the guy I'm working with, he wanted to make a platformer, and I'm like, I
okay,
cannot do that.
yeah,
I can do on the web.
right, yes,
Yeah. But I've loved embracing the limitations. There's definitely like
oh
some
yeah,
Taoist philosophy there that is captured.
100%, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of a pure gameplay thing, right? Like I think incremental games does this well too, where um, I feel like some AAA games, especially in today's day and age, rely a little bit too heavily on flashy graphics and like hyper realistic things, and the gameplay itself just feels a little bit lacking. But you can go into an incremental game and you can get, in a lot of ways, like that kind of itch scratched in some ways of like the feeling of progression and unlocking things and doing new things and seeing new mechanics unroll. And I think PBBGs do that really well too. Um, in some ways better than AAA games. I mean, obviously not all AAA games, right? But we've all played AAA slosh that just kind of is like, okay, this is flashy and it's fun for a few hours, but what am I doing really? Like, where's the meat of the game? So yeah, being able to get right to the heart of it without getting the crutch of fancy graphics. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of the fun's happening in like your thumbs on those games or your fingers on those games where
Yeah.
like 100% of the fun is in your mind with
Yes. Yeah.
PUBGs. And if you're into that, then place to
Yes.
be.
Yeah, in your mind, but also with other people, like the interactions and the drama, especially if there's
Yeah.
PvP or like, the propaganda. It feels almost like I don't know if I haven't played Eve Online a whole lot, but I go to the subreddit sometimes just to see the propaganda and the hate and the maps and the way that people talk about it.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of in their mind, right? Like the game doesn't actually look and feel that way, but it's all the different pieces, the way that they come together, and it creates this experience in the community that's really unique.
Yeah, you definitely get a bit of that with Elethor. Like, just but you get it. Yeah, you get like multiple ships and stuff. So in a way, you faster,
Yeah,
and you can do more. It's more in your head, yeah, but you can
yeah,
do more in your head. So yeah,
yes,
tell
yeah.
me about Elethor. Tell us about Elethor and how
Yeah.
that's been like.
So Elethor, I mean, at this point, so Elethor's been around for 4.5 years, I think. I think it was 2020, January of 2020, maybe 2021. I can't remember. I have to go back and look.
I think your
Um,
first patch notes were in early 2020 from what I saw.
okay. Yeah. So yeah, just it's been a while and I feel like I've learned so much and I feel like it shows in the game. So I feel like a lot of older games kind of, I say older, in the space, there's games like Larinia and stuff that are running for 10, 15 plus years. So Elethor's relatively young. But as a young game developer, I feel like learning and growing so much through the game. In some ways, I feel like has improved it a lot. And in some ways, I feel like it's kind of had these things sort of added and tacked on. It's not as pure of an experience as it used to be. But yeah, Elethor is like kind of sci-fi RPG. You're a character, you progress through tiers, kill monsters, and then you can team up with other people in a corporation and do incursions. You can run missions and beyond with your spaceships to get resources, and all of those basically just feed into each other to get stronger and to grow. The thing that I feel like really sets Elethor apart from other PBBGs is the catch-up mechanics. I think other games are starting to do this well as well. But there's certain aspects of Elethor that are unlimited. Like they have a soft cap, but not really capped in any way. So things like you can take your monster drops, you can put them into a feature called the Recyclobot, which then converts that into platinum, which is a currency that you need throughout the whole game. It's super important. And you can level up that Recyclobot to get more platinum points per turn in of monster resources, but you can also turn those platinum points into platinum at a better and better ratio. So there's people who have invested tons of resources into that feature. They can make like ridiculous amounts of platinum, way more than any other player. Very uncapped, feels very PBBG, right? Where there's other features like so for combat progression, there's different tiers of gear. The current tier is tier 11. And once you kind of max out tier 11, you cannot go to tier 12. It doesn't exist yet. And so all the players have kind of gotten progressed up to that point of tier 11 gear and they're not past it. And so if a new player joins, they still have to kind of progress through the tiers to get to that point, but they can catch up to where everyone else is. And then when tier 12 gets released, people who have amassed more resources, they can progress through the tier faster and kind of max it out faster, but then they still hit that hard cap where they can't go to tier 13 until it gets released. And
Yeah.
so that kind of stair stepping functionality is both a strength and a weakness of Elethor. A strength in that it allows for catch up, allows people to kind of feel like they can jump in and get to where everyone else is, but also a weakness in that I'm the one that has to create every single tier and design it and add new mechanics and create the monsters and the gear and the definitions for everything. And I really become the bottleneck for that new content creation, which I know if anyone's playing Elethor and listening, they're like, release more stuff. Like everyone's always asking for it. But yeah, one person, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, of course. What's your day-to-day like in
Oh man.
managing
So
and building?
I think you mentioned this on the podcast with Randy too. Like a lot of our community as far as developers go is more of a hobby project or a passion project. And some of us make money from the games, but I think there's only like one or two developers that I know of who do this full time and they make a living off of it. And so I'm not one of those. I definitely have a side job that is, tell everyone it's my full time side gig where my main focus would be Elethor and creating things and developing things. But I also have to pay the bills with a normal job that, you know, works normal hours. And so it really depends. Like, I think it varies week to week. There's some weeks where I'm on deadline at my real job. I don't have time for Elethor. I can maybe fix bugs. I can be in the community. I can interact with people. But I'm not developing brand new features. I'm not creating new content. And then there's other weeks where it's like slower or where I have time off, where it's like, all right, I can develop a new feature. I can work on creating more content. I can do some quality of life updates. And the development kind of comes and goes in spurts depending on seasons. And so, you know, what does day to day look like? It really depends. Some days I'm all in on Elethor, just focus 100% on that, just trunking through tasks and knocking stuff out. And some days I'm just looking at my Trello board that keeps growing and growing, wishing I could tackle it, but I can't. Not today, not tomorrow, maybe next week.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that tension for sure.
Does that get frustrating sometimes when you're
Oh
not
yeah,
able to
yeah,
work on it?
yeah. If
Yeah.
I was independently wealthy and had all the money, I would just work on games probably full time. Like that's the dream. That's what I would love to do. That's what brings
Yeah.
me joy. That's what I'm thinking about when I'm in the shower. You know, the problems that I can solve and how I would tackle it, or an idea for a new game or a new feature. It's just always going, and so that's what I would love to do. But unfortunately, real life and supporting a family and paying a mortgage, all that stuff has to come first. So it's that tension.
Yep. I'm there too.
Yeah, I
Gotcha.
feel like most developers in the community are, to be fair. I think some
Yeah.
have more aspirations than others to take something full time and to do it, versus some it's like, no, it's okay just to be a passion project. I don't have to make any money from this. But yeah, I think it's important as a dev to kind of know where you stand and what you want to get out of the project. Because I've seen some people burn themselves out where they think they're going to get to a certain point of income, and it's just not in the cards, or they're not pursuing it quite the right way, or you know. But there's also people who just do it as a passion project. They do it for fun. It's, you know, free. They don't make money on it, and that's perfectly fine as well. You know, just kind of figuring out what you want out of the project.
Yeah. I mean, if anyone was gonna do it, I would think it's you. And I think it's a testament to how long it takes to develop that.
Yeah,
But you got a degree in marketing and you know
yeah.
coding. You're like the perfect match. Does the degree in marketing help a little bit with
Not at all.
Elethor?
Not even a little bit.
No.
I feel like I'm one of those
Oh
that's not
no.
very pro academia. I feel like you could learn more in like a dozen hours on YouTube than you probably could in a semester at a brick and mortar college.
Yeah.
So I've definitely learned more not in college than I have in college. So I can't say specifically that it's helped at all.
Okay. Well, that's good to
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
for all us non-marketers.
Yeah.
What do you think of the marketing world of PBBGs? Like, is it
Yeah.
something
It's
that,
so tough, right? Like,
yeah,
I feel like a big difficulty with PBBGs is accessibility. And I think all of us developers would argue, and we would say the fact that you can play on any browser, on any device, and a lot of these newer games are also mobile friendly, you would say it's the most accessible, right? But if you look at the normal way that most people interact with their phones, no one's installing a progressive web app. No one's navigating to a URL to play a game. Like they're going to the App Store or they're not playing at all. And so I feel
interesting.
like in some ways, I feel like we're kind of gimping ourselves by not learning some of these tools and learning how to package things up. And I'm not saying all of us, right? There's a definitely developers who are embracing it and they're seeing the fruit of it. So like Milky Way Idol is a great example. Moo, MO9, as he's known so lovingly. It's Mo9 because it's Moooo. There's 9 O's after his name. But
Okay.
he's learned how to like basically package it up. So it started as just a web game. He had a decent amount of players, but nothing crazy. Like most other PBBGs would have this. But he's learned how to package up his game and put it on like itch.io, put it on crazygames.com, and then most importantly, learn how to package it and put it on Steam. And that's like a
Huh.
steep learning curve. Like he was messaging me trying to figure out how to do that. What's the tech involved? What are the different ways to like, hook these things up? How to do save games? Like if anyone purchases anything through the Steam platform, they have to get a cut. So how do you wire that up? But he put in the work, and like Milky Way Island is great, right? Like the game looks beautiful. It's got almost 60,000 active players. Like he's probably making decent money from it because he's put in the work, right? And so I think from a marketing perspective, I think telling people about your game can go so far, but I think putting your game where people already are is probably the biggest like thing that you can do. Like you can tell people all day, go to elethor.com in your browser, and they're like, why I'll just search for it in the app store. I don't know why I have to do this. But if it's where they're already looking, they're gonna kind of find it naturally, right? And I don't believe totally in the if you build it, they will come. Like you can build an app and no one ever installs it. I can totally see that. But I feel like if you have a good game and you want people to play it, putting it as close to them as you possibly can so that they don't have to work really hard to try and figure out how to open up the package and play with it is going to be probably the biggest bang for your buck as far as marketing goes.
Yeah, I'd imagine when people think I want to play a game, they're not associating Safari or
Totally,
Chrome
yeah.
with playing a game. Yeah.
Yes, and it's hard because I think all of us developers are like we think.
Yeah.
I mean, PBBGs, but also like incremental games and stuff. Like you just type in cookie clicker, then you go to the website and you play the
Yeah.
game. But they also have an app, and the app is what made it like take off, arguably,
Oh,
because
really?
that's just what 90% plus of people do. Like they don't go to the Safari browser and type something in. Yeah,
Crazy. Might have
yeah,
to brush up on React Native and Electron.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You said that you started 7 years ago. Was there something before Elethor?
No, so as far as PBBGs go, no. So I had developed some in like basic incremental games and idle game concepts, but nothing that I was like, okay, this is like the real deal, what I want to put out in the world. I feel like there's this advice when people start programming that you should build something small, don't build something really big. And I think in some ways that's good advice because you can actually finish a project end to end, see how things fit together.
Yeah.
But in some ways it's bad advice, I would argue, because it's not something you're excited about. Like someone gets into game making not so they can remake Solitaire again. They get into game making because they have this grand vision of what they want to create and what's out there. And so empowering people to do that, knowing that the learning curve is going to be steep, but it also is that momentum and motivation to actually keep trying to learn the technologies and push through. And so, yeah, I feel like I had done smaller projects before then, but I feel like Elethor was the first real, like, this is what I really want to make. This is what I'm really excited about. And then putting in the work to really make it excellent from the get go. And I could argue like that was definitely the most I learned too, to try and tackle the most complicated, difficult problems of programming. But you need that motivation, right, to like push through. And the love of what you're trying to build is definitely the way to do that.
Yeah, would you say, or I wanted to ask how long it took you to get from like idea of Elethor, like
Yeah.
first idea to first players?
Yeah, so this is really like I think it's a testament of my growth, but also a testament of like what start small looks like. So I think from like first like get in it all the way to like first playthrough of like people actually being able to join, I think it was like 2 or 2.5 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, and
Okay.
it was lengthy. Like I remember at one point Elithor had an entire like location and travel system. So I don't know if people are familiar with, I think it's called Dracor, but they have a game system where you can travel to different places on the map, and each like location node has different available resources, different monsters, things like that. And as you progress through the game, you kind of progress through the map, and you want to go to certain places that have certain things, but you can also unlock locations as you progress. It's like a cool mechanic. So I really wanted that. And so I had built this whole thing, like there was travel, you could go from like place A to place B, you could speed up your travel, you could get mounts that made you faster, like unlock things, like all this was built. It was done. And I remember sitting down and like actually trying to play test it and being like, this is so annoying. Like I want to go and mine this resource, and I have to click and click and click and click and click before I can actually get there to mine the resource. And so I really sat down and I was like, okay, what is the point of this feature? Like, is it to scratch an itch for me? Like, how does it actually contribute to the game and what the game is trying to be? And had some like come to Jesus moment where I was like, this is not what Elethor really is. Like, it's an idle game, and having people try and click and travel around to these nodes doesn't add anything to the game. It's not part of the core gameplay experience. And so, like, rip that out. And so you look at the end experience of Elethor, and it's like, oh, like, why did it take 2 years? It's because I literally would build and then rip stuff out as I went, of like learning what fits, what works, what doesn't. And then, yeah, so many rewrites along the way too, of like, okay, I built this thing, I think it works, and then I get 10 active players and it just completely kills itself. And it's like, okay, that's not going to work. How do I rewrite this in a way that makes more sense? How can I fix these things? So yeah, for Elethor, it was like 2.5 years from like first idea to active players. So my second game that I made, to kind of give context, was Trounced. No one plays that game anymore because it's PvP, and I don't know how to balance PvP. If you know how to balance PvP games, anybody out there listening, and you want to kind of hop onto a game that already has bones and stuff, like, talk to me, because I can be your dev and then you can be the balance person, but I cannot balance PvP games. It's like, it's terrible. It's so
You
much
hear that,
different from
Randy?
PvE. Yeah.
Randy can
Oh,
help.
true. That could be cool. That'd be a cool collab. Yeah. No, so Trounced, from idea to like actual people could play it in the wild, I think was like 9 months. So less than half the time, and it had more features because there were so many pieces that I felt like were necessary. So it was way more feature complete of a game when it actually came out, but yeah, in way less time. And then I worked on a game jam project with Archeron, who, it was like the Three Realms, which he's since stepped away from. There's real life stuff going on there, but we went from idea to like playable alpha of that game in probably 2 months. Um, and so just that time shortening is like, you build the tooling, you know how to tackle certain kinds of problems, like, you know the code, you know the game stuff. So I say that only to say, if people hear 2.5 years, it's like, oh, I could never do that. It's like, just don't be a noob like me. Like, learn things as you go, like, figure things out, start a little bit smaller, more constrained. It doesn't have to take that long. But that's how long it took me the first time.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the art, and I know it's not like super flashy or anything, but I
Yeah.
love it. I
Really?
love. Yeah, I'm a Battlestar Galactica fan. I just feel like it kind of gets that vibe across, and
Yeah.
but it's also the ships, especially the visual progression, is just so perfect. How long did that take, and how do you do that?
Dude, I just went to gameicons.net. It's like, it's
No.
free game icons, and just, yep, use those.
They're perfect. Well,
Yeah,
whoever
I'm
did
not an
that.
art guy at all, so I was like, oh man, like, I can't wait. This might sound blasphemous, but I can't wait for AI to get good enough at like making icons and stuff. I feel like it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't do art for anything. Like, I might have an idea in my mind of what I want, but that's the extent of my ability. So yeah, it's all just icons that I've used from other stuff. Yeah.
No, it's perfect. Good
Yeah.
implementation.
Yes. Yes. Stick to my strengths. Definitely not art. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody were to create a like a game icon AI, we would all
Yeah.
subscribe immediately.
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for PPBGs. Like, that's most of the art is just iconography anyway. So I feel like anything to kind of give some customizability and unique feel goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely. So what's the future of Elethor, or at least the future of Caleb look like?
Yeah. So I feel like Elethor, so for a stretch there, I had big plans of like being a game studio. So I've got everything that I've made is under like Cardboard Machete like brand. And that's like for my other side projects too. So like, I've built smeltery.gg. It's like, it's similar to pbbg.com, but trying to like lean more into the discoverability of games versus being like a comprehensive directory. Um, and so like, that's one project. Or I have whaleshark.gg. It's another project about game monetization. And the idea is, how do AAA games and other profitable games monetize? What are the methods that they use? What are some of the specific implementation details? And then distilling that all into basically like a directory, so you can go and figure out how to monetize games for yourself. So all this stuff's under the Cardboard Machete brand, which I felt like was kind of the direction I wanted to go. So I was thinking, I could build Elethor, I could build Trounced, and then I could build other games with other developers and kind of have a library of games that I build and maintain using similar code, similar concepts, and then just basically putting out content patches for all of them, not realizing that I'm only one person and there's only so much you can do. So as I was building Trounced, Elethor suffered for like quite a while because I can only spend energy on one place at a time. or like building the three realms with Archeron. It's like a great project, but it relies on him too. And so if he steps away for real life reasons, the project dies. Like I'm not going to continue pushing on it. Um, and so realizing like, all right, I can do one thing really well, or I can do like two or three things mediocrely well. So I'm just going to focus on doing Elethor really well. So that's kind of my focus that I have been for like this entire year. And I feel like it's paid off a lot. I feel like a lot of the quality of life updates and content updates, the Neo combat rework in Elethor, all those things have really helped like hone the game in a bit more to like what it was originally intended to be, as before it kind of ballooned into a bunch of different systems that felt very Frankenstein. It's kind of distilled it down quite a bit more. So what's the future hold? I feel like the future is more focusing on like Elethor and kind of trying to rediscover the core identity of the game. A lot of the game initially borrowed pieces from other MMOs and idle games that I liked and put those pieces together into a game that was fun. But I think a lot of the magic that was fun at the very beginning of Elethor has been lost since then. And I can't tell quite if that's me getting used to it too much, or if it's just the idea of a new game and the quick progression of it and the like discovering of new features, or if it's something else. And so, like, I think a lot of people would argue that Beyond in Elethor feels like an entirely separate game from like the main game, and even the way the systems don't entirely interact kind of lends itself to that. Like, they're pretty much separate games, but you can kind of play them together in one thing. And I don't really love that. I don't love how separate they are. And so, like, figuring out how can I make things feel more cohesive, more like unidirectional. Like if I'm progressing my whole account in one direction. And even if it's feels a little bit separate, it's everything eventually ties together. So I feel like RuneScape is a good example. Like I can spend time cooking, but the cooking is not like an end unto itself, right? Like it feeds back into being able to unlock other things or being able to cook better food for combat. Like everything is feeding toward your character feeling better. And I think Elethor is feeling better at that, but I don't feel like it's quite at that sweet spot. And so thinking through what are the features, what are the quality of life things that can really try and push things that direction. And I think part of that is having more regular updates for gear tiers and releasing that more regularly. And so before, I feel like it was very sporadic when those gear tiers would be released. But I'm going to try and not speed them up because I don't want to quickly invalidate progression, but have like a more regular schedule for when those new gear tiers get released, when new socket tiers get released. So sockets are what you can put on your gear to power it up in certain ways. So that there's always kind of that carrot on a stick that you can push into to kind of get your character better and stronger. And then all the side features are kind of, they feed off of that as well. So when I reworked incursions, which is like a group combat feature, players are able to basically join together in a group in order to defeat monsters to get rewards. But that combat is based off of something called a combat score, which takes into account your gear, your progression, your socket tiers, all those things. And that will scale forever, right? Like mathematically, like you can always add more of these tiers of gear and tiers of content, and that system will continue to work. And so as I add more tiers, the other parts of the game also are progressing at the same time. I'm not having to create new pieces of content for all of them, if that makes sense. Like things kind of
Yeah.
scale infinitely. And so figuring out what are some new things that I could do or things that I could create that would also scale that way. So some ideas I've had are like timed bosses. And so with the new Neo combat rework, players have health that persists between actions. So if I have 500 health and then I do combat with a monster and I'm at 250 health, my next action I start at 250 health. And I can heal a little bit every action, but if I get taken down too far, my character actually stops to rest up until it gets enough health before it continues fighting. So this idea of persistent health could lend itself to something like timed bosses, where it's like, can you defeat this boss in 20 rounds? And maybe you can if you push really hard into damage, or maybe if you're tankier and you can heal between those rounds, or maybe since you only have 20 rounds, you'd want to build in a certain way, or depending on the monster's stats, you'd have to build in a certain way, but kind of opening up the space for players to create unique gear builds to try and tackle certain challenges. But that feature is cool because it also will scale as players scale. So if I could defeat this monster in 20 rounds, if I do a tier +5 of that version monster, can I still push and do the same thing? Because everything scales the same way. And so designing features that can scale as the game scales rather than putting myself into a position where I'm having to constantly create new content. If I can just create new tiers of content and new monsters, and kind of have that core set of content that I'm stacking on, where all these ancillary features are kind of growing alongside it as kind of the dream. And it sounds a little bit vague because it is. Um, so it's like trying to flesh out that idea, but trying to figure out that balance between new content that's interesting with limited development time and how to create a sustainable way to allow for players to feel like they're progressing, feel like they're moving towards something without just sitting around and twiddling their thumbs for 2 months waiting for a new update to come out.
Yeah, I'm a new dev to PVG, so I haven't
Mm-hmm.
experienced what you're going through. Have you written anything about it? Are you planning on writing anything about this
No,
particular problem and your solution to it?
No, I should. I had a blog for a while on cardboardmachete.com that I wrote like whenever I tackle a certain problem or try and think about how to design like a quest system or things like that. But I haven't written on there for a couple of years. And honestly, it's like a time thing where it's like, okay, how much time do I
Yeah,
have?
yeah.
Because when I write those, it takes a few hours. It's not just me putting something in ChatGPT and saying write an article. Like it's me thinking out loud through all the problems and the solutions with examples and code and stuff. And I've had people ask me to continue writing that, and I have it in my mind that I'm going to do it. And then every week the time just escapes me, and I'm like, all right, where is this supposed to come from? So, yeah, I should write something about that though. I love the idea. I think more games could definitely benefit from that, and I think a lot of games do that like subconsciously even, um, where they have continuing diminishing returns, but then income also goes up at that same scale, and so you're kind of playing catch up back and forth forever. I think that's something that Kessler did really well, especially early. That just kind of was this like infinite feedback loop of getting better and getting better without feeling like you're slowing down too much, but also not feeling like it's accelerating into infinity, where you're always
Hmm.
feeling like you're making progress. A recent game, Minarion. I think I'm saying that right. Kill me if I'm wrong, Vincent. But I feel like that game does a really good job too, where it's like the speed of progression and the way the different systems work together is like you're always pushing forward or getting a new piece of gear or upgrading your farm or progressing something in your guild. And whenever you upgrade one thing, it gives you the currency to start upgrading this other thing. And it's just this constant cycle that feels sustainable. It's not like it accelerates out of control. Um, I know that's just math, but I feel like math was my strong suit until I did game stuff, and then I was like, I don't know as much as I should about math. This is all
Well,
like new to me. Yeah.
yeah, it's math and psychology, which is
Yeah.
much more
Yes.
complicated.
Yeah, because mathematically it could work perfectly, but then you play it and you're like, this sucks. Like I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Or psychology, like psychologically, you could play it and be like, this is amazing. But then in 1 hour, the math just completely goes bananas
Yeah.
and then you're out of a game. Like you can't undo that decision design wise. So yeah, it's a hard balance.
Yeah, it's a weird bridge to make for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, that was awesome. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're busy. I would say if someone wants to learn what, because it sounds like you are talking about something in the last 5 minutes about something that would save devs a lot of time and effort and
Yeah.
make dev a lot easier and the experience of the game a lot
Yes.
better. That sounds really valuable. So
Yeah.
jump on the PVG Discord and look for
Yes,
Zaalah
100%.
if you want to
Yeah, just
if you
ping
want
me,
to learn
DM me.
more.
My DMs are open. You can also
Yes.
read some of my older stuff at cardboardmachete.com. And that's also got links to the different games and stuff that I've built too. So it's not quite updated. I need to spend some time updating that. But yeah, all the content is there. You can go and check that out. But yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, now we'll have to do this again. Thank you so
Of
much.
course. Yeah.